I cancelled my daughter-in-law's 30th birthday dinner after being excluded. The heartwarming reveal. Jane's heart felt like a heavy stone as she stared blankly at the calendar hanging on her kitchen wall. Sarah's 30th birthday was approaching, and it should have been a joyful time filled with laughter, cake, and memories. But deep down, Jane struggled with a nagging sense of exclusion that made her chest tighten. Here she was, a hard-working grandmother in her late 60s, who had poured her love and soul into her family for decades. Suddenly, the bond she cherished seemed as fragile as glass. She remembered the days when Sarah was little, the years of baking cookies together, and heart-to-heart talks that had bonded them in a way that felt unbreakable. Those days are what fueled Jane's devotion to her family. But now, as she listened to her son talk excitedly about the birthday dinner they were planning, she felt as if someone were shoving her aside. Was she no longer part of Sarah's life? Just 2 weeks before the big day, that same son casually mentioned the dinner details, prompting disbelief to wash over Jane. Sarah was inviting a whole new group of friends, and Jane hadn't even been consulted. The warmth in her chest morphed into icy despair. How had this happened? All those years of nurturing and selfless devotion, only to find herself sidelined when Sarah needed support the most. In an attempt to wrap her mind around her bottled-up feelings, Jane retreated to her garden, digging her hands into the cool soil, her thoughts spiraling. Memories of family gatherings, where she'd always been the heart of the celebration, tightened around her like a noose. The laughter, the love it hung in the air like a distant echo. Now, it seemed that Sarah's new friends had filled that space, erasing her from their narrative. A deep ache surged within her. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day of the birthday party dawned bright, but Jane felt anything but cheerful. As she paced her living room, plans bubbled up in her thoughts. Maybe if she cancelled the whole event, it would show them how much she mattered. It was a reckless thought that flared to life, a flame ignited by pain and the sheer need to be recognized. But just before she could reach for her phone, a rattling knock brought her back to reality. It was Sarah, her face drawn tight with uncertainty. "Mom, can we talk?" Jane's heart fluttered erratically as they settled down to face each other. In this moment, they were both filled with unsaid emotions. Vulnerabilities bubbled beneath the surface. Sarah confessed her own insecurities about turning 30, the pressure to succeed and be the perfect friend. It was then that Jane caught a glimpse of the hurt that Sarah had been hiding, realizing that they shared a struggle that transcended age, but the realization couldn't erase the tension as they both wrestled with their feelings. Would they be able to break free from the chains of misunderstanding they had unknowingly forged? As the date loomed closer, Jane found herself at a precipice, torn between standing up for herself and unraveling the rich tapestry of family love that had defined her life for so long. Would they be able to bridge the gap, or would the hurt fester, continuing a cycle of unspoken fears? All the answers hung ominously in the air, waiting for the moment of truth to reveal what comes next. As the afternoon sun poured through Jane's kitchen window, she pushed a stray hair behind her ear, staring at the half-baked birthday cake she'd started. The ingredients lay scattered across the counter, but all she could think about was how the birthday dinner had turned into a battleground of emotions. Mom, Sarah's voice broke through Jane's reverie, pulling her back into the moment. "I know this has been hard for you." Jane took a shaky breath, glancing at her daughter-in-law. She was struck by how vulnerable Sarah looked. It was as if a wall had cracked, revealing the depths of their shared uncertainty. "I loved being a part of your life, Sarah. And suddenly, I feel so invisible." Tears pooled in Sarah's eyes as she sat down at the kitchen table, her voice trembling. "I never wanted you to feel that way. I thought I was doing what's best, but it's only added to my stress." The honesty between them felt like stepping onto a tightrope, fragile yet necessary. Jane could see herself in Sarah, her own struggles ringing out in the openness of her daughter-in-law's confession. It's not easy watching someone you love grow up and change. I want you to be a part of my life still, Mom. I just thought. Sarah's voice drifted, sorrow wrapping around her words. I thought it was time to have different kinds of friends around me. Everyone has changed. It feels like I need to change, too. Time seemed to hang in the air as Jane considered this. Change was scary, but it was inevitable. Thoughts fought in her mind. She thought of her bond with Sarah and how fragile that connection felt at this very moment. I guess I just wanted you to know you can count on me. No matter what. I'm here for you. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. I didn't want to hurt you, I really didn't. I worry I'll mess this up. I'm terrified of turning 30. It's like I'm losing something but gaining. I don't know what. Jane reached out, covering Sarah's hands with her own, warm and reassuring. You've got so much ahead of you. But I'd love to share it. I want to be part of those changes, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. The sadness in the room began to crack, replaced by a burgeoning sense of understanding. Sarah leaned into Jane, and they stayed like that for a moment, allowing the warmth of their connection to blanket the air. But was it enough? Just when Jane thought they were reaching a tender place, another loud knock interrupted, jolting them both. Mom, it's me. I brought all the decorations. It was Mike, overflowing with enthusiasm about the party. He opened the door without waiting for a response, carrying bags stuffed with colorful balloons. In an instant, the mood shifted. A moment of intimacy dwindled to the energy of preparation and rushed decisions. The strains of their conversation were quickly buried under the chaos. Hi, Mom. Sarah. Are you ready? As Mike filled the room with cheerful chatter, Jane felt the hesitation creep back in. Would their moment of understanding be lost amidst the party logistics? Looking at Sarah, Jane felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this wasn't the end of their journey, maybe it was just the beginning of something new. Could they find a way to navigate Sarah's birthday and their relationship in a manner that included both of their perspectives? The doubt and longing still hung heavily, but perhaps they could weave a brighter narrative together. As they all moved about the kitchen, Jane realized one thing: there was more to uncover. Could they learn to embrace these changes together, or would they retreat back into their own hearts, pushed away by fear once again? The answer hung there, an open question, as the clock ticked closer to the anticipated celebration. Jane blinked at the whirlwind of color and noise that had just entered her kitchen. Mike was busying himself, pulling out brightly colored tablecloths and festive plates, voice brimming with excitement. It was overwhelming, almost suffocating, and she felt that warmth with Sarah slipping even further away. It didn't help that she felt like an outsider in her own home, overshadowed by the enthusiasm of a son who couldn't see the cracks in their family's foundation. Mom, can you hang these balloons? Mike asked, handing her a tangled bunch of helium-filled shapes. The balloons bobbed in the air, taunting her. She forced a smile, taking the string, but all she could think of was how this celebration felt like a smokescreen, hiding everything that was really going on beneath the surface. Sure, honey. Just give me a moment, she murmured, trying to decide if she sounded genuine or merely exhausted. Sarah, are you excited? Mike called out, his voice cheerful and buoyant, but Jane noticed the way Sarah's smile faltered slightly. It was a small change, but it concerned Jane. She exchanged a glance with Sarah, both recognizing the familiar sadness that threatened to creep back into their hearts. Yeah. Excited, Sarah replied, her voice steady but not quite matching the enthusiasm of the moment. Jane felt a knot forming in her stomach. They needed another moment to reconnect, but the spirit of the party was consuming the room. She wanted to say something, needed to say something, but the words eluded her. As Mike continued to set up, Jane caught a glimpse of Sarah's face. It was a striking mix of excitement and anxiety. A complicated cocktail of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. Jane raised her hand, wanting to break through the festive noise, but before she could speak, Mike turned to Sarah with a huge grin. "Hey, can you help me with the cake? We want it to look perfect." The tension shifted again, and the moment vanished. Jane watched as Sarah followed her husband toward the counter where the half-baked cake lay, the weight on Jane's heart growing heavier. She realized that this wasn't just a celebration of Sarah's birthday, it was representative of all the changes that were happening. Jane sighed, masking her discomfort as she moved to the other side of the kitchen. As she poured herself a glass of water, she couldn't shake the feeling that while the party was unfolding, her relationship with her daughter-in-law felt at risk of unraveling. The air filled with laughter, and Jane found herself on the outside looking in again. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. "Who could that be?" Mike hollered, rushing to open the door. Jane tensed, leaning against the counter. "Maybe more guests?" Sarah suggested, trying to hide her uncertainty behind a smile, but Jane couldn't shake her worry. What if these new friends were the ones to fill the awkward spaces left between her and Sarah? Would the fear of being pushed out become a reality? When she heard a familiar voice, one she hadn't expected, she felt her heart lurch. It was her sister, Lily. "Surprise!" Lily exclaimed, stepping into the room with her arms wide open. "Lily!" Jane breathed, glancing toward Sarah as the tension in her heart mixed with excitement. Would this surprise lift the heaviness? Or would it only complicate things more? The room buzzed with the sounds of cheerful greetings, but Jane couldn't help but wonder, could they all navigate this complicated family dynamic, or were they inviting chaos into their fragile truce? As her eyes met Sarah's across the room, she felt a bittersweet hope. Maybe they would find their way again. Just then, Mike shouted from the corner, "We need to get this party rolling. Let us celebrate." The moment of truth was close at hand. Would it lead to healing or further division? With the clock ticking and new uncertainties piling up, Jane felt as if the next few minutes would shape their journey. Mike caught the energy in the room, rallying everyone with his joyful shouts. He had this way of bringing life to any situation, even when Jane felt confined in her own thoughts. As the balloons swayed gently from the ceiling, she struggled to push her worries aside and immerse herself in the celebration. "Come on, everyone, cake time," he announced, guiding a smiling Sarah toward the brightly decorated table set for her birthday. Jane stood back, observing as the two of them exchanged playful banter. A familiar pang of sadness constricted her throat. It was the kind of happiness she wanted for Sarah but couldn't quite grasp herself. "Let us make a wish," Mike called, handing her a candle-topped cake adorned with colorful frosting that seemed to shine under the kitchen lights. Jane noticed the way Sarah's eyes glittered but still carried a flicker of doubt, a discouraging reminder of the silent war they both faced. As they gathered around the table, Lily joined Jane, handing her a drink. "You all right?" she asked quietly, sensing the heavy air surrounding her sister. Jane paused, looking at the laughter erupting between the two people she loved most. "I just feel, I don't know, out of place," she admitted softly. Her heart felt fractious, scattered over what this gathering represented and what it could become. Lily nodded, sipping her drink. "Sometimes all we can do is trust they'll find their way," she replied, her voice friendly but firm. Jane longed for that certainty, but it felt elusive. As the candle flames flickered, Mike turned to Sarah with radiant excitement. "Now, blow out the candles and make a wish." The laughter rang out, but Jane's heart thudded, a warning of the pivotal moment approaching. "Just make sure you wish for better cake next year," Jane teased, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'll wish for the perfect party next time," Sarah shot back, her smile glimmering, but Jane detected a hint of something lingering beneath it, a yearning for connection that mirrored her own. As the crowd sang happy birthday, Jane felt the tears prickle at the corners of her eyes. The words blended into a haze as she gazed at this girl who had stepped into her life so easily, yet felt so far away. A wave of affection crashed against the shore of her worries, pushing her towards something she had postponed long enough. When the last notes died down, everyone cheered, and Mike encouraged Sarah to cut the cake. But something in Jane stirred. "Wait," she called suddenly, raising her voice, surprising even herself. "Everyone, can we take a moment?" She clasped her hands tightly, heart racing. The room quieted, eyes turning toward her, curiosity mixed with surprise. "Before we dive into cake, I think it's important. I think we need to talk," she started, her voice wavering. Mike's brow furrowed. "Talk about what, Mom?" Jane searched for the right words, but uncertainty washed over her. Was she really going to unveil her fears now? Lily's hand gripped Jane's shoulder, anchoring her. "You've got this," she murmured gently, emboldening Jane to step forward into the unknown. And just as she opened her mouth to speak, the door swung open unexpectedly, carrying a gust of cold air and a tense silence. The surprise guest was someone she hadn't anticipated. The exhilarating energy of the party was about to shift again, and Jane could barely breathe at the implications. Who was it that had come at such a crucial moment? What fresh turmoil awaited them? The figure standing at the door sent a wave of recognition crashing through Jane. It was Clara, her estranged sister. The last time Jane had seen her was 3 years ago at their mother's funeral, a fraught encounter that had ended with harsh words and unresolved pain. Clara's presence shifted the atmosphere, her wide-eyed expression matching the unspoken tension swirling among the guests. "Clara?" Jane barely whispered her name, half expecting the apparition to vanish. The shock was palpable, laughter receded, replaced by an awkward stillness that seemed to suck the air from the room. Sarah's gaze darted between Jane and Clara, uncertainty flickering on her young face as Mike's joyful demeanor faltered. Clara stepped inside, brushing off the cold and pulling her sweater tightly around her shoulders. "I know this is unexpected, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." Her voice wavered, thick with emotion. There was no mistaking the sincerity behind those words, but Jane's heart felt barricaded, guarded against the hurt that had festered for so long. "You shouldn't be here," Jane replied, her tone sharper than she intended. It echoed through the silence like a thunderclap, surprising both her and Clara. "Please." Clara's voice broke, eyes pleading. "I couldn't wait any longer. I came to try and make things right. Family means everything, doesn't it?" The room buzzed with murmurs, heads turning as spectators dissected the exchange unfolding before them. The excitement of cake and celebration faded, it was replaced by a reality that struck like a hammer. Jane's mind raced, flashbacks of their last fight consuming her. The mean things they said, the chance at healing lost in a mess of heated words. But standing here now, vulnerability cloaked Clara, and a part of Jane fought against the urge to dismiss her. The sadness bubbling beneath the surface, the one she had been trying to ignore, threatened to surface again. "I wanted to be at Sarah's party. I didn't think." Clara paused, her eyes glistening. "I've missed so much. I don't want to miss more." "Missed?" The word tasted bitter on Jane's tongue. "You walked away. You made your choice. But maybe it's time for new choices," Clara argued, the desperation igniting the passion in her voice. "Especially now, what if we can find a way back?" Jane felt herself wavering between the desire to scream, "No!" and the glimmer of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could rebuild the bridge burnt in anger. Mike, sensing the emotional chasm that had opened, stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation. "Hey, let us just take a breath, huh? Sarah's birthday is about, is it really, though?" Clara interjected. "You have to understand, this is a part of her story too. We can't pretend I don't exist, not anymore." Jane's chest tightened, each breath harder than the last. The conflict swirled around her like a storm, mixing dread and longing. Would embracing Clara mean jeopardizing the fragile stability she and Sarah were trying to create? But as she looked at Sarah, standing on the cusp of this moment, gazing at both women with wide, innocent eyes, the realization hit her. This was about more than just Jane and Clara. It was about family. It was about carving a path through their shared pain. "Mom?" Sarah's voice broke through the tension, weaving innocence into the thick air. Can we try to be together? Jane's heart paused, caught in a moment of reckoning. The stakes were high, and as she stood there, she understood that the next words she spoke would either turn the tide toward healing or plunge them back into division. How could she embrace the pain from the past and create space for hope in the future? A question hovered: what choice would she make in front of her family, in front of an unwelcome yet earnest sister? Her world felt as fragile as spun glass, and Jane knew her reply might shatter or mend the bonds that held them all together. But could she really risk everything for a chance to heal? Jane took a deep breath, her gaze flickering between Clara and Sarah. The weight of silence hung heavy, stifling and electric, as if the room itself held its breath, waiting for her decision. Sarah's innocent eyes sparked something within Jane, a reminder of the untainted love children have, the kind they often lost sight of as adults. Clara, Jane began, her voice betraying a tremor. I don't know how to trust you again. How do we go back to what it was before? Clara took a cautious step forward, her hands trembling. I know it's hard. I know I messed up. But can't we try? Not just for us, but for Sarah? She deserves a family that doesn't tear itself apart. The air in the room shifted again, a collective intake of breath as other guests shifted uncomfortably. Jane felt the heat of emotion rise in her cheeks. Pain and anger bubbled up, pressing against the walls of her chest, but there was also something else: years of isolation, aching loneliness, and the flicker of familial hope. Is that all you're going to say? She snapped. The words spilled out like venom, yet they were coated in deep-seated hurt. Jane struggled to contain her sadness. You just want to show up and act like everything is okay? Like nothing happened? Of course not. I'm not expecting that. Clara's voice was a soft plea now. I just want to try. I want to learn from it, to make it better for me, for you, for Sarah. I don't want to miss anything else. The room seemed to shrink, focusing on the moment. The lingering tensions between the sisters twisted in a network of despair and yearning. Jane's heart raced, each beat echoing in the silence. Mom, please, Sarah appealed softly, eyes bright with unshed tears. I just want us to be together. Family means we have to stick by each other, right? A single tear slipped down Jane's cheek, her mask of anger cracking, revealing the raw wound of longing beneath. She felt the swell of emotion rising, but it wasn't just pain anymore, it was the glimmer of something fragile and beautiful: hope. What if they could rebuild? What if they could decide to bring life back to their broken relationships? But could she let herself be vulnerable again? The fear of falling apart, of more damaged trust, tugged at her. What if you're not here next time? What will happen after I let you in? Jane continued, feeling her own vulnerability clawing up. And what if I open that door only to be pushed further away again? I promise. Clara's voice was barely above a whisper, sincere and steady. I promise to make it worth it. I'll prove to you that we can be better. The quiet intensity of Clara's words wrapped around Jane like a warm blanket, yet a part of her remained hesitant. She glanced at Sarah. The little girl's heartfelt gaze held faith, something Jane had nearly shattered with her own uncertainty. Okay, Jane finally said, her voice trembling as she spoke the word. Okay, I'll try. Relief washed over Clara like a wave, and for the first time in a long while, there was something cracking inside Jane too, a bright sliver of hope, but even as she spoke those words, doubt gnawed at Jane. Could she really transform this moment into something lasting? Or was she simply setting herself up for more heartbreak? As she wrapped her arms around Sarah, feeling her daughter's warmth, the question hung in the air: would their next steps lead to healing, or would the scars of the past still haunt them? Jane looked at Clara, seeing not only her sister but a path she could choose to walk down. Yet uncertainty lingered like fog. Could they really make it back? The next moment could change everything. Would they face it together or falter apart again? Jane pulled Sarah closer, feeling the small body nestled against her, warm and alive. Sarah's presence was like a balm, soothing the jagged edges of her heart. She glanced back at Clara, whose hopeful expression flickered like a candle in the wind. Emotions churned within Jane: fear, hope, love, and the residual anger from their past. Let me think about it," Jane said at last. The words slipped out softly, weaving through the tension in the room. Clara nodded slowly, as if trying to savor every crumb of reassurance Jane was willing to offer. "Thank you," Clara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "That's all I can ask for right now." Time seemed to stand still, lingering in the afterthought of that small commitment. Jane could almost feel the pulse of the world outside the walls. The muffled sounds of laughter from the party guests blended with her heavy breathing. She pulled back from the embrace, meeting Sarah's glistening eyes. "Can we go outside?" her daughter asked, looking between the two women. "Sure, sweetheart," Jane replied, pushing back her doubts. Together, they stepped into the crisp evening air. The garden was twinkling with fairy lights, softly illuminating the pathways. Clara followed behind, leaving some distance, letting Jane have her moment with Sarah. "Mom, did you really mean what you said?" Sarah's voice broke through the soft melodies from inside the house. Jane knelt down to Sarah's level, seeing the sunshine reflected in her eyes. "I did, honey. I want to try, but it might take time. What if it doesn't work? What if Aunt Clara hurts you again?" Sarah's brow furrowed, the worry etched on her young face. Taking a deep breath, Jane replied, "I don't know. But sometimes, taking a chance is worth the risk. We could end up happier together." "Yeah, like a real family," Sarah nodded, layman wisdom shining through her innocence. "Yes," Jane agreed, hugging her again. But as they embraced, the fear loomed in Jane's mind. Was it really that simple? Life wasn't just about happy endings. It was messy and unpredictable, and most importantly, it was fragile. Clara stepped closer, her presence a calm wave in the storm of emotions swirling inside Jane. "I know I can't change the past," Clara said, her voice slightly trembling as she reached out, hesitating for a moment. "But I promise to give you both my best. No barriers, no secrets." Jane's chest tightened. She still felt the echoes of betrayal. What would it take to truly move forward? With Sarah watching, Jane couldn't afford to crumble, even when the weight felt unbearable. "Trust is earned, Clara. I can't promise you it will be easy. I wouldn't want it to be. I'm ready to do the work," Clara insisted, a hint of determination piercing through her vulnerability. As the stars twinkled brighter overhead, Jane felt the flicker of possibility, a fragile path that might just lead to healing. Then let's start fresh. One step at a time. Just then, bursts of laughter erupted from the party, and Jane's heart ached with a strange mixture of nostalgia and dread, as memories of family dinners filled with laughter danced before her. The feeling of what if loomed large against the backdrop of that joy, but was she really prepared to open those doors again? With newfound resolve, she caught Clara's gaze. "Let's try to start with just us. No expectations, no past." Jane's proclamation hung in the air, weighty and fragile. All eyes were on them, the air charged with trepidation. As they began to exchange tentative smiles, a small glimmer of hope sparked between the sisters, a flicker of connection that might just light the way forward. But just as they started to step into that possibility, an unexpected figure arrived, shattering the moment. The revelation could change everything, and Jane felt her heart sink as she recognized who it was. Jane's breath caught in her throat as she turned to see Marcus stepping through the garden gate, looking every bit as surprised as she was. At first glance, he seemed unfazed, but that could only last so long. The laughter from the party faded into the background, replaced by the heavy silence that cloaked the garden. "Marcus? What are you doing here?" Clara asked, her excitement deflating like a punctured balloon. I thought I'd come by after work." "I didn't realize there was a party," he replied, his eyes narrowing as they shifted between Jane and Clara. A storm brewed behind those dark lashes, and Jane felt herself sink under its weight. "Didn't he your text say you'd be out late?" Jane's voice dripped with disbelief as she took a step toward him. He frowned, crossing his arms. "That's not what matters right now. What's going on with you two?" The sharpness in his tone sent an icy shiver along Jane's spine. This moment felt so fragile, so precariously balanced. The faint clinking of glasses and muffled chatter from within the house felt like echoes from another world, one where simpler problems existed, like avoiding awkward small talk. "I'm trying to mend things," Jane admitted, glancing at Sarah, whose confused face mirrored her own swirling emotions. Holding her daughter's hand, she noticed her small fingers tightening around her own. "Trying to mend things? After everything?" Marcus's voice rose, sharp and accusatory. "You really think that's how it works?" Jane pinched her eyes shut, taking a slow breath. "It's not that simple, and you know it." She looked at Clara, remembering the warmth of their moment moments ago. "People can change. We can change. But we need to give each other that chance." Marcus stepped into the light, his face a mask of skepticism, "And at what cost? Are you just going to ignore everything she's done?" "I'm trying to heal for Sarah's sake too." The urgency in her voice rose sharply, throbbing with desperation. "Can't you see that this isn't only about us?" For a brief moment, the tension simmered, but then heated glances passed between the adults, thick with buried emotions and old grudges. Sarah looked from her mother to Marcus, confusion swimming in her eyes. "Is Aunt Clara bad?" she finally asked, her innocent voice slicing through the strained air. All eyes landed on her. Clara's lips trembled as she knelt beside Sarah, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "No, honey. It's complicated, but I promise to try to be better. I want your mom to be happy, and I want you to feel safe. Can we all be happy together?" Sarah's voice wavered with hope, blissfully unaware of the potential fallout. The silence that followed was deafening. Jane's heart twisted painfully. She wanted to say yes, to hold on to that glimmer of hope for them all, but her heart felt heavy with uncertainty. "I don't know," Marcus began, frustration spilling from his words. "This is just going to confuse her." "Listen," Clara interjected, her voice rising almost to a shout. "We're at a point where we either fight for our family or walk away. Sarah deserves the best of us, and she shouldn't feel the weight of our past decisions." Jane clenched her jaw. Little by little, she felt walls start to form around her heart again. "Maybe we need a break from each other," she suggested, the words tasted bitter. Just then, a chorus of laughter erupted from the party, and the joyful sound felt like a cruel reminder of everything they weren't. Would the hope for a fresh start slip away with that laughter? As uncertainty loomed in the air, the tension thickened around them. Each gaze was a question, each heartbeat a hesitation. Would they fight to piece together the fragile threads of family, or let the storm break them apart? And with the night still young, they had no idea how deep the impending revelations would cut. The moment hung heavy, words vibrating in the air between them like taut strings ready to snap. Jane's heart raced as she looked from Marcus to Clara, each face a map of conflicting emotions. In that instant, everything seemed strung together by a fragile thread, one sharp enough to slice through the tension but fragile enough to sever the bond they all desperately wanted. "I think maybe I need some air." Clara's voice was barely a whisper, and without waiting for a response, she turned away, brushing past them into the shadows, leaving an empty space filled with regret. Jane's stomach dropped. She fought the urge to follow, but Sarah's tight grip on her hand anchored her. "I don't want Aunt Clara to go," Sarah said, her brown eyes wide with confusion. It struck Jane like a blade, her daughter's innocence, a painful reminder of the chaos swirling around them. "Sweetheart," Jane knelt down, meeting Sarah's eyes. "It's complicated right now. But it doesn't mean we can't find a way to make it better." Marcus's stance softened, just slightly. "Do you really believe that?" His expression was a mix of hurt and hope, and Jane saw the deep longing he had buried beneath layers of anger. I have to believe it, Jane replied, her voice trembling with honesty. For her sake, I need to try. As she spoke, she realized she was not just trying to convince Marcus or even Clara, she was convincing herself. Each word was a deeper cut that reminded her of their past failures, but also of the flickers of joy they shared. What if it all falls apart again? Marcus asked, the edge gone from his voice. Jane straightened, meeting his gaze. Then we will rebuild it. Together. We owe that to her. Just then, the laughter from the party moved closer, spilling out into the garden like a wave crashing against the shore. It contrasted vividly with the chasm of uncertainty before Jane. She could almost hear the joyous murmurs masking the storm they were battling. Every family faces challenges. Marcus's voice softened, vulnerability peeking through the cracks in his armor. But we've been through so much already. Is it even worth it? The question hung in the air like a thick fog, and Jane felt her heart race again, the weight of it threatening to pull her down. It is, she said firmly. If we want to be a family, we have to work on it. All of us. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit she knew well. And what if Clara can't change? What if she does something again, something that hurts Sarah? Then we deal with it, Jane responded, resolve bubbling within her. But we can't just keep running away. I'm tired of that. An understanding flickered between them as the laughter faded. Marcus took a deep breath, his expression shifting slightly from doubt to a tentative acceptance. Okay, then. But it's a shared journey. Absolutely. With that, Jane felt the tiniest spark of hope. It was a start. They were still standing on a precipice, but perhaps together they could find a way to walk back across the narrow bridge to safety. But just as that spark flickered, Clara re-emerged from the shadows, her cheeks flushed and eyes red. She hesitated, rethinking her next step. I can't leave things like this. Can we all talk? Honestly? Jane and Marcus exchanged a glance, the shifting dynamic palpable, and at that moment, they both understood, they were about to dive into something raw and real. Just how deep the waters would go remained a mystery, but they knew one thing for sure: it was time to face the truth, and as they all took hesitant steps toward each other, they had no idea that what lay ahead would demand more than they had ever been willing to give. Were they ready to confront the shadows of their past? Jane took a deep breath, feeling the tension in the air shift slightly as Clara stepped towards them. Would they really do this? Could they find the strength to confront the pain they had nestled in their hearts for so long? Can we sit? Clara clearly needed a moment to collect herself. Jane nodded and found a quiet corner of the dimly lit garden. The wind rustled the leaves, creating a soothing backdrop as they settled into their seats. The laughter from the party felt distant now, an echo of a joy that seemed fleeting and fragile. Before we go any further, I want to apologize, Clara started, her voice trembling. For everything. I know I hurt you, Jane. I let anger and pride get in the way. The sincerity behind her words was palpable, and Jane's heart softened, a reluctant compassion pushing against the walls she had fortified over the years. And I was defensive, Jane confessed. I didn't handle things well. I shunned you instead of addressing the hurt. I'm sorry too. It felt strange, but liberating, like unlocking an old door, revealing sunlight into a long dark room. I miss you, Jane, Clara whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I miss us. The rawness of their shared experience loomed large, both standing at a precipice of memories they couldn't ignore. I want better for Sarah, Jane said, glancing at her daughter, who had come to lean against her side. She deserves a family united and whole. Not this mess we've made. Clara nodded, her expression earnest. We all deserve that, she said, her voice thick. I want to try. To be there for her. For you. Silence filled the space as the weight of their shared understanding began to settle in. Jane looked at Marcus, who had remained quiet, processing the emotional exchange. What do you think? she asked quietly. Marcus sighed, folding his arms, his brow furrowing with concern. We've all been hurt. We need to be open to healing, but it has to come from all of us. I think we should approach this together. A flicker of hope brightened Jane's heart. Exactly, she encouraged, squeezing Sarah's hand. I believe we can. If we're willing to face our fears together, we can build something stronger. Clara's smile began to bloom, a tentative promise of what could be. It won't happen overnight. Trust takes time, doesn't it? Yeah, Sarah piped up, her eyes sparkling. Like when you bake a cake. You can't rush it. The innocence in her voice broke the tension, drawing chuckles. Yes. Just like that. Jane confirmed, her heart swelling as laughter floated through the air. We have to nurture it. One layer at a time. With Sarah's spark guiding them, they planned for the future together. Cards shuffled in a shared deck they held, and for the first time in ages, it felt right. Just as they were finding their rhythm, the door from the house swung open, and Mike poked his head out, grinning. Hey! Cake time once more. Are you all joining or what? Laughter bubbled, and the moment felt like a celebration in its own right. Let's go, Jane said, standing up, her spirits lifted. As they walked toward the party, she felt her heart open slowly, like the first beams of sunlight piercing through a long winter. It would take more work, but there was a solid foundation being laid right in front of them. A family repaired, piece by piece. Inside the house, the atmosphere was vibrant, laughter ringing through the air. They stepped together into the warmth of the gathering, and everything felt full of possibilities. Clara's hand brushed against Jane's lightly, a gesture of promise that echoed silently between them, and as the cake was cut once again, Jane found herself overwhelmed with gratitude for this raw, real moment with the people she loved most. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope, fragile yet powerful, carving something beautiful from past hurt. Perhaps they were far from perfect, but they were willing to try. It was a start. No, not just a start, it was a new beginning. If you felt that heartwarming connection and want more stories like this, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss a moment, hit that bell for all notifications. Leave a like to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below what was your favorite part of this journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, we create a community. Let us build it stronger.